Sorry for jumping the gun there. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for attending today's Incarceration Prevention Reduction Task Force meeting. Also, of course, our Law and Justice Council meeting for January 27th, 2025. We will begin with a land acknowledgement, which I'll read right now. Before we begin, we acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional and unceded territory of the Lummi, Nooksack, Samish, Semiahmoo people, who have cared for and tended this land since time immemorial. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. We begin this effort to acknowledge what has been buried by honoring the truth. We pay respect to their elders, past and present. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us together here today. And please join us in uncovering such truths at any and all public events. So we'll call the meeting to order. And the first thing on our agenda today is committee assignments. So much good and important work happens in our committees, and our chairs have done a good job of things this year, organizing their agendas and such, and we have a lot more work to do in the near future. And the committee makeup is exceedingly important, and this is our once a year, as Jill was saying just before the meeting. There's a lot of churn and changes and such throughout the year, but this is the one time to really look at the committee makeup, make sure that you're on the right committee and committed to the committee. And if we could go through them committee by committee right now, and if you can make sure that you are on that right committee and such, and if it's not appropriate for you to be there, now would be the time today or maybe in the next day or two to make some changes. So let's take a look at the first one. If on our agenda today is the Incarceration Prevention Reduction Task Force, this body. And does anybody see anything that is out of order on that list or changes that need to be made? I'm not seeing anything. Okay. And let's see. Jill, our quorum is 14 for that one, I see. So let's see. How many people do we have in the meeting? Do we have a quorum right now?
Give me a moment. I think we do have a quorum. Looks like,
Okay,
yes.
that's good to know. And just so you know, I was when I got when I started as chair, I decided I was going to be on every committee. I did that for an entire year, and I have now decided that I cannot no longer take the time to go to every single meeting. So I have pulled my name off the committee, most of the committees. And because if I don't show up, then there can be a quorum problem. So just to note, let you know, note that change. So steering committee, if everybody would take a peek at that. The steering committee generally is the leadership of the various committees.
Can we screen share during this discussion? I would just,
Yeah.
that would
Sure.
Thank you, Maya. I was going to ask the same thing.
Oh, nope, that's the wrong one. Give me a minute, guys, and I will.
Okay. All right. Steering committee is Barry, St. Paul, Heather, Peter, Bertie, Dan, Stephen, Raylene, Hannah, Sloan, and Tasha Thompson. And the quorum is 6 for that one.
Peter,
yes.
for the task force in full, and Jill, maybe this is a question for you. Do you want proxies officially listed on this list as well? I think it could be helpful in the next couple of days if people have proxies that we know to welcome them.
Sorry, folks. It's not necessary, but if you'd like to let me know who your proxy is, I can definitely include that.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see. The Crisis Stabilization Facility Committee is on hiatus, and we will make a decision on that in July 2025 if we're going to change its constitution or not, or just let it go. We have the Behavioral Health Committee. Jill, do you want to? Yeah, there we go. There's the Behavioral Health Committee. Does anybody see any changes that need to happen there? Dan, are you on?
Yeah, I'm here.
Not sure. Okay.
Nathan is not gonna be subbing in for me. I don't even know if I should. I'd like to go to those, but I don't want to hold up votes, so I don't know. Is it a problem? Has quorum been a problem in the Behavioral Health Committee?
No, we're not really voting on very much.
Yeah, I don't think so. Just
yeah.
can we just strike Nathan Bima and you can leave me on there and I'll.
Is that Peter? Is that or Jill? Is that the full list? I can't tell.
It is the full list. I just
Oh,
can't
there it
quite
is.
fit it on my screen here. Give me a second.
Yeah, I know. I think we have more people on that committee than we have on the task force.
So I guess, Peter, for why is there people and then also, what's the difference between the alsos and the top people?
The alsos are not IPRTF members. They're additional community members who've been invited to be a member.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Scott, to that, just real quick,
Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
to that point, the reason there are so many people on that committee is because Stephen and I have done a recruitment effort over the past year or so to round out the membership of that committee to make it so it has a number of different stakeholders from different subject matter expert areas. So if you look at that, the list there, it's pretty extensive, and it includes first responders, policymakers, and stakeholders from other areas. So I just wanted to make sure that we had as many people as necessary to make the decisions that we need to make when it comes to the directives that have been handed out by the co-chairs of the task force.
Thanks for that explanation, Dan. You can see on your screen also the Legal and Justice Systems Committee. You can run your eyes down that. I see we have an also with Wendy Jones. Sounds like she's joined the Legal and Justice Committee after a few months of retirement. And then we have the pretrial processes work group, which is our one work group currently for the IPRTF. Today we'll be addressing a possible another work group for the Behavioral Care Center. And then Index Committee is listed there as well. So if there are any changes, let us know now or get back to Jill the next day or two. All right, thank you everybody for taking the time to go over that. All right, on to the next item. Barry, do you want to, let's see, oh, no. Barry, you usually cover Justice Project Implementation Plan updates. Did you have anything to say before we move on to an update from Kayla?
No, I don't think I have anything on that today, Peter. I think the star of the show is the quarterly update, so.
Okay, very good. Kayla, are you with us?
I am.
Well, thank you so much for being here, and I'll leave it to you.
Thank you. I am happy to join everyone to give our quarterly update from the executive's office. Would it be okay if I share my screen so you can see my PowerPoint?
Absolutely.
Okay. Can everyone see that okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, great. So we have a draft quarterly report that we've shared with sort of task force leadership, and we'll likely send out a draft version in short order. Typically, I've sort of gone project by project in this report. We have some more substantive information to share related to the jail and the 23-hour crisis relief center. So the bulk of my report verbally today will be focused on those projects, and then you can read sort of more details on some of the services related investments and progress in the report that I send out. I really want to thank in particular Melora Christensen and Hannah Fisk from Whatcom County Health and Community Services, who have been driving a lot of that services innovation forward, and you'll see their work reflected in the report. So as everyone knows, the Whatcom County Justice Project was adopted through County Ordinance 2023-039. And we are working on 15 interrelated projects to advance system reform and the development of facilities that are humane and are designed to try to prevent and reduce incarceration here in Whatcom County. The executive branch, as you know, is largely tasked with implementation of the plan, but there are some projects that fall outside of our bounds, such as the criminal justice policy issues and reform. And this is, as I said, part of my quarterly reporting. So, you know, the projects that I'm not going to speak about today, you can see listed on this slide. These are all moving forward based on ongoing work and investments. So we continue to meet with the Finance Advisory Board. Originally, those were set for quarterly meetings. We've moved that to monthly as the jail planning work has really ticked up in recent months. And then we have work advancing mostly through Whatcom County Health and Community Services and the Sheriff's Office on the remaining projects. The jail is and behavioral care center are about to reach a really intense planning phase. So tomorrow at the County Council's Criminal Justice and Public Safety meeting, we are going to present the scope of work and introduce the owner's rep for the jails project. This is a group that's going to help with overall project management, stakeholder engagement, keeping the project on track, both from a community engagement and design perspective, and also from a construction management perspective. So you can all meet them if you want to attend or tune in tomorrow at the council meeting at 1 p.m. And then they will also be sort of a regular attendee at Finance and Facility Advisory Board meetings going forward. Our next steps on the jail and the behavioral care center are significant, and we hope to accomplish all of these work items by this fall. So we will be outlining in further detail sort of the project scope, master schedule, and working internally between the executive's office, the sheriff's office, facilities, the health department, and others to sort of name, you know, you're responsible for this, you're responsible for this, and really have an internal sort of charter going. So we have really clear lines of who's delivering what. We are going to be working with IPRTF leadership and the Finance and Facility Advisory Board on sort of a stakeholder and public engagement plan, so we can make it really clear on when there's going to be opportunities for public comment related to the jail design, and make sure we're giving folks enough advance notice that they're going to be able to weigh in a meaningful way. We will be, of course, working with our facilities department on additional site planning and entitlement activities to prepare for permitting. So that's, you know, geotechnical work, archaeology work, preparing for SEPA and permitting with the city of Ferndale. A very immediate next step for us is we're going to be working with the owner's rep to secure state approval for progressive design build. This is an alternative leak delivery method for the jail and behavioral care center project, where we bring a design builder on contract somewhat immediately, hoping to have that contract wrapped up by the end of July. And so the designer and the builder are working in concert from the beginning. This is generally seen as a modern way to deliver public projects, leading to cost efficiencies and a higher quality product at the end of the day. So we're pretty excited about that work. And then once the design builder is under contract, that's when our work on actually sort of programming out the space of the facility is going to begin in earnest. We will be working with the sheriff's office and a consultant to think through a validation of the sheriff's estimates on jail capacity and confirm the planned operational model for the facility. This is a task that we'd like to complete sort of in the next 90 days. So we have it confirmed going into that programming and design exercise. We are in receipt of a proposal from a sub-consultant of our owner's rep who could do an independent analysis, and we'll be talking over the next couple of weeks with the sheriff's office about that, and hopeful that we can sort of roll out the information on what that will look like in short order. That same consultant is prepared to help take that planned operational model and jail capacity to develop a preliminary capital budget for the project to present to the Finance and Facility Advisory Board and the County Council, sort of again, sort of all in this spring, early summer timeline. So we are moving forward quite rapidly. We have asked our owner's rep to include in part of their scope of work a project management dashboard and cost transparency tool. So this would be a tool that's publicly facing on our website where folks could track progress on the construction of the jail and behavioral care center. They can see sort of how much money has been spent on what activity, whether our performance is aligned with our master schedule, and folks will be able to really see where we are at with the project. So that's a tool that we will be working on and investing in this summer. And then we also are in receipt of a sub-consultant proposal for further defining the behavioral care center scope and working with the task force, Whatcom County Health and Community Services, and the prosecutor on what that looks like. I think it would dovetail nicely with the proposal Peter has for a subgroup of the IPRTF to work on that project, because then we'd have sort of the stakeholder constituency that's prepared to engage with us really rapidly as we build out that work. And then we would also look to hire someone to help us figure out how we structure that facility to maximize feasibility of Medicaid billing and coordinate with tribal partners and behavioral health providers in the community. So it's an active part of our continuum of care. We will be talking with Prosecutor Ritchie and Whatcom County Health and Community Services and Task Force leadership to get their thoughts and feedback on that scope of work before we finalize any contracts. And again, that's sort of something that's going to happen in the next few weeks, is those decisions about how we want to move forward with consultant services there. I'm going to spend the remainder of our time talking about the Crisis Relief Center, but want to see if anyone has questions about this part before I continue.
Any questions, anyone? Doesn't look like it. Kayla, move ahead. Thank you so much for that report. That's great.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
really
And then I'm going to dive into even more detail on this stuff in a memo that we plan to send the County Council and the Finance and Facility Advisory Board later today. Peter, Heather, as representatives of both the IPRTF and the Finance Advisory Board, if you want to share that with the full task force, that's totally fine. So you'll see that come into your inbox later today. Okay, so the Crisis Relief Center, this was our Go First facility project under the Justice Project. We sort of poured an enormous amount of staff time and energy into this to date, and we're reaching sort of some decisions and turning points that we think we need the IPRTF's help with. So just to talk a little bit about what we've done, I don't think any of this is going to be a surprise to you all, but we have fundraised $14.2 million for this facility. We think we're looking at a $14.7 million project. So we are pretty much there. On the facility side, that would allow for finished space for a 12,000 square foot crisis relief center and 12,000 square foot shell to accommodate future services such as on-site medical, DCR co-location, and some other things. We are still interested in securing additional capital funding, so we'd be better positioned to set up the facility with a second story to accommodate those future services or build out the ancillary services now. But we are sort of interested in proceeding regardless with what we have on hand. And of course, if this group has ideas for how we can further raise money, we are interested in hearing them, but we don't want to hold ourselves up with sort of trying to continually meet a growing operating gap to build out that other side of the facility. We haven't sort of made that decision yet, but would be interested in consulting with the IPRTF around sort of how long we wait in hopes of further fundraising for more space. We have completed an architectural bid for design and would be prepared to interview top scoring firms to proceed with schematic design. So we have those proposals in hand and they have been scored. Whatcom County Health and Community Services, so Hannah Fisk and Eric Chambers have drafted bid documents for a licensed behavioral health provider to both assist in the pre-planning phase and manage care negotiations and actually operate the facility once it is complete. We have some questions about whether releasing that RFP is the best step at this moment or whether we'd want to pivot more towards a letter of interest or informal outreach. So that'll tie back once I share share the bad news on the next slide. But one other piece of good news is we're having really productive conversations with Peace Health in partnership with the city of Bellingham, and that they're interested in sort of engaging and participating in collaborative planning to make sure that we're having successful ED diversion and we're appropriately providing healthcare and transition between systems of care. So we've had a couple meetings with them and have one we'd like to get on the books for February as well with Peace Health leadership. Scott, did you have a question?
Yeah, that 12,000 square feet that you want to fill out to begin with, approximately how many employees do you think would be involved with that? Do you know at all? Have a clue?
So I don't know if Melora, you remember from Hannah and Eric's work, but we could get back to you, Scott, if needed.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Yeah. So sorry, I'm just gonna make a note so I don't forget. Okay, so this is the problem. This is the bad news. So concurrent with all of this planning work and our readiness to proceed, we Eric Chambers and Hannah Fisk and Melora have been doing some operational viability assessment. They've been doing interviews with statewide partners, talking with the BHASO, and then also had Joe Valentine, former director of the BHASO, sort of do some projections around Medicaid billing in the facility. We've also recently heard that a provider pulled out of their work at a Linwood facility, which is in, our same North Sound region for behavioral health care, because they were concerned about feasibility of the operational model. And we are hearing concerns from King County regarding substantial operating funding gaps for their facility. Basically, this is a state-driven model. We had legislators go to Arizona, approach Whatcom County, approach other communities around building out these facilities. We raised our hand willingly, but unfortunately, what works in Arizona may not work in Washington State's broken behavioral health care system until we see the legislature come up with a funding mechanism to make these facilities whole. Basically, what we're seeing in King County is that about 50% of the clients are non-Medicaid, and the state has no mechanism to bill for those clients. So King County's facilities, which are of similar size to what we're conceiving here in Whatcom County, are exceeding $10 million a year in operational gap from what can be recovered from insurance. You probably remember from the Justice Project implementation plan that the county had planned to invest about $500,000 to $1 million a year in these facilities, which is a sizable commitment, but nowhere near what we think is needed to make these facilities whole. We're also deeply concerned that providers are going to continue to run scared because the billing mechanisms are so out of line. So we're concerned that if we release an RFP, we are not going to secure a provider and not going to be able to be successful in sort of assuring operational viability in this until the state fixes this funding problem. So we're working, this is sort of one of our top legislative priorities. We've been working with our lobbyists in the BHASO to advocate for a state fix on this. We know legislators, Representative Davis, Representative Macri, are starting to convene partners in the next couple of weeks to figure out what they are going to do. We feel like we're sort of in a holding pattern until we get a sense of where the legislature is going on this, and we would like the IPRTF's partnership and input on next steps. We're faced with some really major decisions. We have to decide sort of whether or how much we want to wait, given the award timeline for our capital funds. How we scope that capital project, given this uncertainty, whether to proceed with schematic design, and how much is reasonable to spend on the capital project prior to the legislative fix, how we structure the services RFP and think about securing a provider when we don't even know if this facility is going to be viable, and how we sort of work with the IPRTF stakeholders, the county council, the MAT group, and behavioral health providers in our community around puzzling through this issue, which is sort of so disappointing for us all and creates a lot of uncertainty. But just here today to sort of, in an effort to be transparent, and think through this with all of you. So that was the bulk of my update today, and I'm sure there are sort of a lot of questions on this crisis relief center issue, and really want to work through it with the group and think about next steps.
What questions do we have from the group for Kayla? Kayla, I have a question. Can you give us in your talk with our legislators, what are you hearing that you could share around fixes for this, the political, what's the field, the playing field that we're looking at?
Yeah, I'll give it a shot and then defer to Melora if she has any additional information. I mean, the state's operating budget is in really horrible shape. Like legislators are basically telling us don't make operating asks this year. When we talked to the BHASO, it sounded like there was discussion around basically sort of an operating proviso to try to make some of these facilities whole. I don't know sort of if those conversations are evolving and folks are coming up with a strategy that's more sustainable. But I am concerned about any fix that just sort of relies on an every 2-year funding proviso from the state, because when we start spending money on this capital grant, we're entering into a 10-year commitment with the state to operate this facility. And so if we don't have 10 years of funding secured, given what we're seeing, that puts us in a really risky position and starts jeopardizing other projects that are really important to this community. So Peter, I don't have a great answer for you. I hope we will know more in a couple of weeks when Representative Davis convenes her initial conversation. Melora, do you have more?
The only thing I would add is that I think we are sitting in a fortunate position, since there are already facilities that are open or about to open. And so those legislators in those areas are needing the fix sooner than we are. Kayla mentioned the Linwood facility. It's turnkey ready and they're unable to open it. And so I do think we need to partner with those jurisdictions to make sure that we have the same messaging. But they have buildings that are ready to open and they need to fix this. So I think we are in a fortunate, the pacing of our project, it allows us to continue to ask for that, but we're not in the position where we're already built and ready to open.
Thank you. Arlene.
Yes. Well, I don't think there's any reason to question this project or have doubt about it. It's either right or it's not right to do it. And we think in the behavioral health field that you're getting at the source of the problem, which is the beginning. And when there's a crisis or an emergency, there's a place to go for it and for planning for the future treatment of the people who are having a crisis. So I don't think we should give up, and we should not doubt it. And we just put one step in front of the other and keep working on something that is so vital.
Thank you, Arlene. And Bertie, go ahead.
Yes. I don't know if Kayla can do this, but Could you give a short summary of what the issue is that they are not allowed to bill insurers? That it's because my understanding of what you said is that the deficit comes because they can only bill Medicaid, and so everyone with private insurance can't receive funds, and I don't quite understand that. I don't know if there's a short explanation.
Yeah, I can give it a shot unless Melora, you feel like better prepared. Okay, I'm gonna give it a shot, Birdie. It's not gonna be the best answer anyone's ever articulated, but so my sense of it is that there are some folks who are coming to the facility who are just flat out uninsured. If they are eligible for Medicaid, there's a mechanism to sort of get them enrolled, et cetera. But if they're uninsured and not Medicaid eligible, we've got a problem billing there. Then there are all, the multitude of private insurance companies, right? Like just within any healthcare organization, they would sort of have to get under contract with all of those and deal with all of these various billing issues. And the providers may not be well positioned or interested in engaging in that effort. They're sort of behavioral health providers who haven't had to deal with that as much in the past. And then from the private individual side, like folks are in crisis, and sometimes it takes some convincing to go to a facility like this. If they're walking away with an ER type bill, even after we bill private insurance, they're gonna not want to go back, tell their friends not to go back. It's not the place you would want, like the ER works and people are willing to go because you are so sick when you have to do it. This is a, different type of illness. People might not be as willing to go and rack up a $3,000 bill at a facility like this. So that's my best attempt based on my understanding. Melora, do you have other things you would add?
No, I think you got it. Just also mentioning that the Medicare population is another piece that is not accounted for yet.
It's kind of a perfect illustration of the chaos and barriers in our healthcare system is what it is. Okay, well, thank you very much for that.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have a question for Kayla? Oh, Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, what is the ITA status of this facility, just so we can have this conversation?
It's a voluntary facility.
Okay, thank you.
And Kayla, I've got a question. So the fundraising is near complete for the capital part of it. What if there are great delays, let's say an entire year, does that money, are we in danger of losing those funds?
So about $3 million of it is local funds from the city of Bellingham and Whatcom County. That, I would say, Mayor Lund's on here, but no, I don't think we're sort of in danger of losing those local funds. However, we have 11.2 or $11.3 million of state funding. I would say, within the next year, we got to figure out what we're going to do here, because like best case scenario, we get a couple more reappropriations for from the legislature. I think we would have 4 years best case to spend that $11.3 million. I'm just shooting sort of from the hip a little bit here, but at some point we're gonna have to make a decision about whether this is viable, so we could reappropriate that money to a different type of behavioral health facility that does have more operational viability, and then have enough time to design and build that facility and advocate to the legislature around the reappropriation. So, at some point we're gonna have to make some decisions collectively and think about the risk of losing that capital grant.
Very good. Thank you. Sat Paul.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Sorry for being late. Other duties. I think that the operational cost, we should lean on our own resources, own means, the Peace Out. If you look over last 15 years, the public funds we have spent have directly benefited millions, if not tens of millions of dollars, to Peace Out. Sorry, it's a public meeting and I want to state it publicly. It is very, very important because I used to be for 10 years, Peace Health used to have a Citizens Advisory Committee. I was on that for 2004 to 2015. And they used to write off $90 million as unpaid bills from ER. And we as a committee start telling people, if you have a headache, don't go to the ER. If you have this, don't go to ER. And then the opioid crisis, everything happened. How much money we have taken from county, from city, and state, and Deacon Center, this 23-hour facility, LEAD, GRACE, our investments in from Behavioral Health Fund. If you count out, who benefited? It should not be a riddle. So I think until community gets together and do something, we have made an ask. Me and Mayor have really made an ask, and they're still working on it, But our ask is they should fund the operation of 23-hour facility because all the benefits, waste station. Who put the money in the waste station? Out of the $14 million now. County, we gave the building up. Then we put money in there. Then federal government gave $2 million. State government gave $4 million. And who's getting benefit? If they save one patient, they don't have to keep on the bed, which is unable to pay. That's the people they're going to send to that place for recouping. And who's paying for it? We are paying for it. And how much money they have actually put in waste station? You should all do some research and find out. So I'm being a little harsh, but I think these are the facts. If there is a commitment, we can start construction this month, this year on that facility, and we don't have to worry about losing the money.
Very good. Thank you, St. Paul, for that perspective. Very much appreciate that. Mayor Lund.
Thanks, everyone. I'm going to have to run here because we have council starting at 10 a.m. Today. But I want to acknowledge much of what Kayla's presented just is an incredible body of work. And I want to acknowledge how much work and good work is taking place across the street. I want to affirm that the city's money that we've committed remains. So local funding is not in jeopardy. We've made an allocation of all of our combined opioid settlement funds to support the Behavioral Health Center. And those will remain as we kind of navigate through this process. And committed to the project. And I also want to amplify, what the executive just said right now. We've been united in several conversations with Peace Health. We are calling on them to step up and meet this need in our community right now. And we invite everyone on this call to be partners and making sure that the public benefits they receive are commensurate with their support in the community in this way. And so I just kind of want to second part of what the executive just said right now. Thanks all.
Thank you. And Heather, go ahead.
I have a few questions. So for Executive Sadhu and Mayor Lund, if the Incarceration Task Force or if any of us as individuals can be helpful in a collective ask of Peace Health, I think I would personally be interested in that. And I imagine the task force would also be interested in that, whether that's a letter or a series of letters or joining meetings or whatever it could be. That's something that I've been worried about for a long time, especially when we learned last year about the Ann Deacon Center that the vast majority of the use was diversion from the emergency room and not very much at all from law enforcement or EMS as it was designed. So would love to also be thoughtful and creative about that. And I know it's a public meeting, but I think that the old St. Luke's campus could be part of the formula of what's that leverage that Peace Health could give back to the community. And I mean, I know it's a big puzzle, but I want to add that to the conversation. Kayla, I'm curious, I'm sorry if I missed it, what the annual operating shortfall is that you're estimating. And before you answer that too, my brain wants to look at on paper, what is the difference in the capabilities and the different clients we would be able to serve? Melora, maybe this is a one-on-one with you, with the current Ann Deacon Center. What would be different about the 23-hour crisis relief center that we're talking about? Who, why would we have that and this? Plus then the behavioral care center, what are we imagining? And I know that that's kind of a this year community involved conversation. And then where the 50% of the of the jail and behavioral health tax, where those dollars could eventually be supporting the shortfall, and just kind of, if we were to go back to the drawing board, knowing the needs of today of the people in our community, what building would we build? What service would we have? Because I don't want to do a sunk cost of this was a good idea 3 years ago, but maybe today there's a different, better idea that we can then go and reappropriate and rethink how are we meeting today's needs. So I guess 3 questions, but Kayla shortfall, Melora series of needs.
Yeah, so I'll answer that question, Heather. This is just sort of, this isn't like, I'm not 100% on this information, but this is the best information I have. We are hearing that the Kirkland facility, which is one of the operational facilities, costs roughly $20 million a year for 30 beds to operate, and that the state's reimbursement models pays for about half of that.
30 beds in Kirkland.
$20 million a year. So if we think about a $10 million gap, right? If we had like a 32 recliner model here, and again, like this is rough costs at this point. The entire justice sales tax brings in about $13 million a year. Right, and we have obviously agreements around the jail construction, but even without that, you would be looking at the vast majority of that sales tax to operate this 130 bed facility.
And what, 130 or 30?
30, okay, 30 bed facility.
Got it. And then how does Kirkland fill in their shortfall?
King County has a massive property tax crisis levy. So they are working on a state fix, but they are in a very different position than we are in terms of local resources.
Also, I think Eric Ritchie's in as an attendee, Jill, if you want to promote him.
Okay, and I'll let Laura speak to the rest.
I just wanted to add one quickly, the sermon I gave. I don't think we should individually start talking about it. We should make a small group. And I believe Mayor and myself would be available and develop a strategy rather than us individually reaching out to back channels to help Peace Health will not be productive. Ultimately, we want them our partners. We want to work with them. I just was so emotional that I put it that way. But I think that we should develop a strategy. 4 or 5 people can get together and work out how should we approach that and how you can help efforts by Mayor and myself so far. Yeah,
I appreciate that a lot, Executive Sadhu. I think they're a really critical partner that came across clear in your remarks. And I would volunteer myself to be a part of that group if there's anyone else from the task force that would like to offer themselves, raise your hand so Executive Sadhu knows you'd like to
I don't have to
strategize.
answer right now, but we can work through this, but this is important. Yeah, thank you.
Rosa raised her hand. Thank you, Rosa. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in with your other questions, Heather. So I think the primary difference for folks to understand between the Andeacon Center for Hope and the 23-hour Crisis Relief Center is that our acute withdrawal services that are operated by Pioneer Human Services and our crisis triage, mental health crisis triage services operated by Compass Health have specific eligibility criteria for what allows you to stay in that facility. So with withdrawal services, it is an acute medical unit. They can work with people for 3 to 5 days, but they are managing withdrawal symptoms. So someone has to be in that state where they would need support with withdrawal symptoms. And so folks have to call to see if there is a bed, and then there's a series of questions to make sure that they are able to meet that. With crisis triage, similarly, people are able to stay 3 to 5 days and, are receiving services around mental health stabilization support. It doesn't have that same medical component, but there is Compass Health going to be reimbursed for their time there. And so they have to make sure that that meets that criteria. What's really great about the Crisis Relief Center model is that it's something that can come before that is really meant to be a no wrong door policy. The legislation was drafted to benefit first responders with a 5 to 10 minute drop off time and not needing to say, hey, does this person meet this criteria? Should we transport them? What's so great about this is you're able to stay for 23 hours and 59 minutes. And so in that recliner observation model, it's saying, hey, can I take you to the Crisis Relief Center? And that staff there are going to help you with what's next. It might be, withdrawal services at the Andeacon Center for Hope, or it might be crisis triage. And that, because of where the facility will be built, would be a walk across a parking lot. And so care coordination will be able to be done, I think, in a seamless way. But what matters is this allows people to have a place to go. When you think about the crisis continuum, we have a lot of, talented and skilled community members and staff who respond to a crisis, but then where can they go, right? They often can only go to the emergency department or jail, or if they meet criteria at the Andeacon Center for Hope. And this will allow first responders and other programs to take people to a facility where they can stay and have their basic needs met. And I know that homelessness and shelter is kind of an added piece to this, but just for context for you all to understand that the severe weather shelter, which has been open for multiple nights, operated by the county, has been over capacity every night. Last night, over 105 people with 20 people on the wait list. So when you think about just kind of the ongoing need of people getting to a place where law enforcement or EMS is seeing them a lot because they're in crisis and they don't have their basic needs met, this would allow an observation unit and skilled staff to be there to have a landing place to just think about what comes next. It's not everything, right? It's not housing, it's not long-term support, but it is something to give people a landing place and a place to go to think about what's next. And that's really the difference. I think Digwalich Wellness Center at the Division location, which has a soft opening as of today, is another option where it's a low barrier open access where people can get MOUD services if they're ready for that. So really it is about thinking about, is the continuum, are you able to access the continuum, and where are those points? Right now, it's if someone's ready and law enforcement is able to transport, it's still challenging to get them connected to the right services. So we hope that the 23-hour Crisis Relief Center would be operated in such a way that really takes some of that load off of the crisis continuum.
See, Heather, did you get all your questions answered?
I did for now. I could go way into details, but I don't think that's the right thing for this moment. But I do wonder what the next step would be. How can we be helpful if there's more detailed questions that I don't want to take us off track. There could be a whole separate meeting on this, I think.
I think the segue in the next item might be helpful.
Okay. Thanks, Barry.
Okay, well, thank you so much. That was a very good discussion, and I am very thankful for Kayla and the executive's office charging forward with so many things, and the health department, sheriff's department, all of you are doing great work, and I very much appreciate it. Actually, the next thing is the public distribution of quarterly report summary, and we're going to hear from Marty and Holly about that.
Hi, everyone. I can take that one.
Oh, thanks, Marty.
Before you do that, Peter.
Yes, Barry.
Kayla, you are on my presentation to chime in when we get to my agenda item. Are you still okay with staying?
Yes, I do have a conflict and might have to scoot out in a little bit, but I'm gonna.
Can we shift the agenda items?
Well,
Peter?
we're gonna shift
okay.
it. We're gonna shift it. So let's,
Thanks,
Barry, I'm sorry, Holly and Marty, if you could just hold on one moment. Let's let Barry go ahead. And Kayla.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, I was relying heavily on Kayla and Erica to help me with part of this presentation. Anyway, I want to preface this by the last statement in my presentation. If Jill, if you could share screen, that would be great. It says always, always copy Jill in all correspondence. Well, that should have also been the first line. So that's an important part of this whole presentation, is that we always loop Jill in when we're going through a process and communicating with each other. So bringing ideas forward to the IPTRF. I kind of put this into a couple buckets, one being the kind of the what kind of things are we looking for when we're interjecting ideas, and how do we bring that forward through the process to get a recommendation through. Now, you've just seen just now an example of how something can go within the task force meeting itself. It can go from statement of a problem, discussion of a possible solution, and almost a decision to form a work group. So that was like right in the task force itself. So there's a lot of different avenues for policy and idea development and proposals. So that was a great example of how it happens sometimes just on the fly in the task force meeting. Anyway, I've got a few buckets of in the buckets, and that is process improvement is a thing that we do and want to keep working on. Task force scope and mission, and then policy recommendations. And for the what in process improvement, I just listed a few things that are in the task force's rules of procedures, which is kind of what we operate. So that's an internal thing with the task force. So things like meeting structure, voting rules and procedures, parliamentary procedures, things that apply to kind of the inner workings of the task force on the structural level. Other things that recommendations could come is how committees operate, how they run their meetings, the things that we're trying to improve with committees, and then obviously other processes that are too numerous to list. But there's something always coming up, as we noted today, that we need to deal with. And then we have, recommended changes to the enabling ordinance. That's kind of the top level requests that we would have. Things like membership of the IPTRF, terms, the overall mission that was established by the council. And those are things that those kind of recommendations need to kind of come back, or they do need to come back to the council for a consideration and approval. So that task force mission's got a couple different levels. The one I just mentioned is the council level, but there's also one that's internal to the task force as well. And that's like the work plan and how we're approaching the work that we are doing. So development of the work plan, suggestions about the work plan, helping Peter and Heather develop it. And then potential new opportunities for task force engagement. And that could be very broad. But as you see things that look interesting, those are the kinds of things that you would want to bring through the process. So when you get to the third thing is policy recommendations, this is the what and how. And Erica and Kayla had agreed to come on and talk a little bit about when they talk about policy, what is helpful for this project and the things that we can do to be helpful. So Kayla?
Yeah, thanks, Barry. Eric and I were talking to Barry last week and thinking sort of like if we could give some concrete examples of the type of places we're looking, the executive branch and the council are specifically looking for input from the IPRTF. I really think at a whole, it sort of has to do with prioritization of resources, in terms of the work that the executive branch is doing, right? Like there's things in the implementation plan, in the ordinance for the justice tasks that talks about spending plans, implementation plans in future years. And I think that's going to take a lot of work in the intervening periods to think about how we prioritize facilities, how we deal with the sticky challenges like the Crisis Relief Center, how we look at data to make decisions. I think a lot of the task force work around criminal justice reform doesn't really sort of, and it is sort of somewhat separate from the work of Whatcom County Health and Community Services and county facilities that we're doing to sort of implement a lot of the things in the plan. But places where we are specifically looking for policy feedback, I think continuing to refine the work that the Index Committee and the JPOP are doing around data is very, very helpful for us. So putting concrete recommendations on paper around what data this group expects to see and why is something that we sort of yearn for, so we can sort of make decisions around how we collect and manage our data as an institution. Prioritization of facility capital projects is a place where we really need input, like a very good sort of working theme perhaps for some of the subcommittees, right? Like, do we take this state money and continue with the Crisis Relief Center? Do we think about a reappropriation? When we think about our next facility, what should that facility be, with the understanding that we can only do sort of one of these types of facilities every few years from a treatment standpoint, because of sort of internal capacity and the availability of state funding. What can we do to get other institutions in the state interested in owning and operating behavioral health facilities in Whatcom County, so we're not just reliant on the county's institutional capacity to build these facilities? Those are areas where sort of the task force making concrete recommendations is really helpful. And then I do think Peter's idea around sort of further sort of providing a voice at the policy level around what the behavioral care center looks like is a really, really helpful place for the task force over the next few years. Certainly, like Prosecutor Ritchie, the sheriff, all of us are going to be working internally on what that looks like, but sort of being able to consolidate some of the public input into one place, so we know where to look to check our work and think through what that facility is going to look like is really helpful for us.
Well, thanks, Kayla. While you're still here, questions for her on what she's kind of laid out and what kind of policy things would be helpful for them.
I guess I have a question I'd like to pose to Dan and Stephen, who are chairs, of course, of the Behavioral Health Committee. Some of the items that Kayla is talking about, are these things that priorities that you could see engaging with in your committee? Do we need some other structure where we've wound down our crisis stabilization facility committee, and we are kind of on pause for that to think about whether we needed a new direction for it. But many of the things that Kayla's talking about may well fit within behavioral health. So anyway, if you have any thoughts on that.
I think Dan has dropped off. Mayor Lund mentioned a council meeting, which they must have gone off to. What I can say is Dan and I are still very much in process and wrestling with exactly the question that Barry and Kayla have moved forward a little bit here. I think where we have been thinking of going is the other side, the downstream part of the implementation plan. We are in the very first couple years stages with the executives implementation activities, and there's a whole other side of the implementation plan, which is building out a behavioral health treatment system that fits with diversion and reentry and those kinds of things, instead of incarceration. I think that's where Dan and I have been looking. We've been talking with Melora, and we'll be talking more with Melora and the health department. So I think we've also been looking for program models, or thinking that we would be looking for program models, and I think Kayla's articulation is a little more general than that, and I understand why. So I think we need more discussion on this for the role of the Behavioral Health Committee. Frankly, as Dan mentioned, we've got a lot of practitioners as well as policymakers and officials as well. I'm not sure how well we're constituted for the kinds of things Kayla just ran through.
Okay, well, that's helpful to hear. Thank you. Scott, go ahead.
So Kayla mentioned data in being it critically important for us to see some data. And I know when we put our top 3 priorities together a few months ago, data was in that with the index committee. And I guess, Bertie, you're the chair of the index committee. Is there any hope that we're going to get data soon? I mean, I guess I've been on this thing for, I don't know, more than 5 years. And I've never seen any really good data. I hear good things like Grace and Lead, they work well, but do we have data that supports that? Like recidivism data that would say, yeah, these people that went through Grace and Lead, they didn't come back. Where are we at with gathering data?
Well, being chair of the index committee, I think the next few months are going to be fairly critical with how we define our tasks in terms of who's doing what and how we really get down to, as Kayla says, getting on paper concrete data that we need. And I think part of that has to do with how the index committee fashions its relationship with Village Reach and how much they're focused on J-pop and how much the index committee is part of it. And since they just started in January, I think we have work to do in defining those relationships. I agree. And I also would defer your question a bit, Scott, to Melora at the health department, because I believe that, Melora, you do have data on Grace and Lead. It's just not in a place that's on a public dashboard for people to see, but perhaps the IPRTF could be part of how it's looked at. So those are my 2 cents worth at this point.
All right, thank you very much, Bertie. And Stephen, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry to jump back in here, Peter. One of the areas Dan and I have taken note is the priority given to data, as Scott pointed out. And one of the concerns both of us have, and I don't think this is an index capable kind of question, so I refer this back to Barry and Kayla and Melora and I don't know, the criminal legal system people. I have not, I'm more on the periphery now than I used to be, so I may be wrong about this, but my sense is that the Village Reach contract is hunkered down in the health department and the behavioral health realm, and there's no responsibility called for there to bridge the systems between the criminal legal entities and the treatment side of things. And I can't understand why that is, if it is, and I don't think we can succeed without that. So I don't know where that bridge in our data systems is coming for. And to me, that seems like a policy recommendation to Kayla is we need to make sure that we can track people through the criminal legal system or the diversions from it into the treatment systems, into the reentry systems, and measure outcomes so that we can evaluate the effectiveness of this whole mega system that we're building. I think that's what Scott's asking also. I don't see us paying attention to that. And if we are, I hope that will get reported to us. If we aren't, I hope we will remedy that as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Stephen. And Melora, go ahead.
Yeah, just briefly, Mayor Cortez, I would say that, we are at the health department keeping data collection and program evaluation of our response systems division programs, which include GRACE, LEAD, the alternative response team, our street medicine program, mental health court. And we work closely with our data team to do that. And we are really trying to show, is there a difference between what someone's engagement with the legal system and the crisis system is prior to being enrolled in one of our programs or being served by a program, and then that same time period after they are no longer in the program. And we're seeing, pretty consistent reductions in law enforcement, EMS, and jail stays. I would say that we are bound to what agencies are willing to build data interfaces with us. And so we're getting close to being able to have a data interface with the CAD 911 system and the Whatcom County Sheriff's Office and the Bellingham Police Department long arm system. And so as Bertie said, these are not public facing dashboards, but we are, as we're building that, we're trying to think about how we could on a regular basis get that information out in terms of program outcomes and the impact that it's having on crisis systems. We know that there's a lot of different players. It's not just the intervention of GRACE and LEAD or an alternative response team, but we can measure that in these cohort systems. So it's not to this global extent that you're talking, but I hear loud and clear that this group would like to have more information on how those diversion programs are impacting the system.
Thank you, Melora. And Barry, I'd like to get back to you and keep this conversation on the policy recommendations and such. And it's been a really good discussion, but if you could move on.
Sure, and thanks, Kayla, for staying. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna hop off now, but of course, available as always, if folks want to give me a call and happy to talk more at the next meeting too.
Okay.
Thanks.
So that'll be something that's continually under work or in work as far as, coming up with those policy ideas that we may want to put forward. So I want to talk a little bit about the how. And I think, one of the items I have listed here is the subcommittees, and that's kind of where Peter was coming from, is how do the subcommittees get involved in any of these ideas that we want to put forward? Well, they're part of a couple of different places in this timeline I have here. At the front end, you want to research and explore your ideas and vet them to make sure that they make sense. So those people you may want to talk to are other stakeholders in the process, the subcommittee structure, and your colleagues, people on this screen, people you work with and trust, and that you would feel comfortable running your idea by, just to get a sense of how people feel about it. And then having support for your idea. We talked about data just now, but relevant data that might pertain to your particular idea, or articles or studies that have been done that may be helpful in presenting that. And then ultimately there may be an opportunity for a presentation by yourself or third party if you're recommending some kind of a third party partner or something in our work. That's been done as well. Moving through the process, getting subcommittee, these aren't absolute steps, but they are steps that can be helpful. Getting subcommittee buy-in on your proposal would be valuable for sure. Steering committee is where all things kind of get filtered, funneled, put into the hopper, however you might want to word that. But the steering committee would want to hear those proposals, and then the proponent would want to get a recommendation from steering to the full task force to get your idea through. Then there would be an opportunity to present your proposal to the full task force, where you would have any of that support material I talked about, data, studies, etc. You would have that available in your little packet you would provide. Let's see. Participating and presenting to and preparing for council. Now, that's if it's applicable. If it's the level of policy that affects the council, you may want to have be involved in when the idea does get presented to council for formal consideration. Develop and execute an advocacy plan. Find out who's your allies. I talk about it a little bit later, getting the lay of the land. That's important to find out, do you have a person that'll second your motion when you make it? Just to get an idea of where you stand. But obviously ensuring compliance with OPMA and quorum rules, that's important. You don't want to be going outside of a quorum in your collaboration with other task force members. So this is the easy part. The making motions part, I just said have a second lined up, make sure you know the lay of the land. And when making the motion, it's important to be clear and concise. Don't tell the whole story in a motion. Make it an ask, a one sentence ask. And that's easier for people to understand and put into a, what am I voting on kind of frame of mind. So your language or your motion should also, you have it in electronic form. So you can ship it off to Jill. You should have already done that though, right? But anyway, have it in electronic form. And when you make the motion formally, use the language "I move," and then state your one sentence motion. And then be prepared to speak in favor of your motion. You will be asked to go first if you want to. That's a parliamentary privilege of a motion maker. So the order of events is a motion, a second, and then discussion on your motion that you could lead off if you choose, and then there'll be a vote at the conclusion of the discussion. And again, I put the note in, please always copy Jill on everything. So that's kind of the how. Like I said, there's no exact way to do that. The example today of how it just evolved through the task force meeting itself. But I think these are vehicles and lanes that you can use to bring things forward. That's all I have, Peter.
Okay, thank you, Barry. Are there any questions or discussion around what Barry's presented? I know we've all been in many, many meetings and are familiar with how to make motions and such, but I just wanted to make sure that Barry did a full presentation here so that we know that this is where in advisory bodies such as this one, this is where our power and our process comes to, is making good motions and moving things forward, and then making sure that that we move those things forward through to the council or whomever the recommendation is for. So, Holly, go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, Barry, that was excellent. It was, yeah, really clear. And my question is, do we have a sample of a really good policy proposal that has come out of the IPRTF in the past that has either gotten to the executive or to council both. Do we have anything that we could use as a model?
I'm sure we do. I think we just have to go find what would be the best one and that would be a Jill thing. Jill, do you think we could find something?
I emailed around to some of you folks, and I think Holly, you were included in that, some examples of motions that went to the council.
Okay, so
Great.
go back.
I can resend that.
All right. So definitely wanting our co-chairs to consider how to bring forward motions from their subcommittees, bring them up to this group, and then on to council or whatever body it's those recommendations are meant for. All right. Any other questions? Okay, let's move on to the next item. Marty, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. Jill, I'll just go ahead and share screen, all right? To bring the proposal up. And so, again, hi, everybody. I'm going to just do a brief run through on this proposal we wanted to put forward. And Jill, do you know if we have a quorum for passing a motion today?
No, we've lost our quorum.
Okay, so should we go ahead with this? Just Scott?
I think,
Scott, go ahead.
I think technically if you had a quorum when you started, now it just takes a vote of the quorum plus half the quorum plus one to pass something at this point. When you start the meeting, the quorum is established. If
The only problem is if you announce there's not a quorum, that changes that.
and we just did, huh?
And we just did.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, can't do it.
I had no idea.
I think we could still hear it in the presentation, I think.
Yes, Marty, I think you should go ahead and present.
Okay. So this proposal was motivated by the sense of having a fair bit of quite a bit of public interest in what's going on with that Justice Project implementation plan, all those projects. What's happening? And here we are a little more than a year past the passage of the ordinance, and there's been some information going out. Peter and Scott and Paul and Kayla all did beautifully on interviews with KGMI. There's been a few posts, but there isn't a place to go right now for regular information about what's happening with the projects. Kayla's done these beautiful reports, these quarterly reports. They're pretty long and dense for the public. So what we're proposing is to do shorter, more slightly more user-friendly versions. They're still a little dense, but more graphically easy to read and less text, and just giving people what we feel are the highlights. We have used the JPOP for identifying what are key stories, what are the things that pop out to you the most from a report, and that's been helpful. So here's what we're proposing: to take the quarterly reports, which you'll be getting the Q4 report later. But take Kayla's reports, boil it down into something that looks like what is in your packet. This kind of thing. And Holly and I would do the boiling and would work with Chuckanut Health Foundation, who did this particular version of the graphical layout. And we would then post it with Jill's help to the Justice Project website. There's a Justice Project webpage. So that's the proposal. And to do that quarterly, and then also use what the JPOP committee says are things that they think the public wants to know about from these reports, and make posts that would happen about monthly using the IPRTF Facebook page. And we would make sure that partner organizations like the health department and the executives office, all these places people might go for information, that there are links to the Justice Project webpage, and that they know about the Facebook posts and are encouraged to share them. And I think there's so let's just call it social media posts, because I think there's other platforms as well. So I think we're violating one of Barry's rules, which was a kind of simple motion. I think it is a one sentence motion, but it's just a long sentence. But this is the kind of motion we're hoping for, is to authorize us to do this work. Crossroads to do the boiling down of the quarterly reports. Chuckanut Health Foundation would do this, this formatting, but the main part is to use the IPRTF's the Justice Project webpage and the IPRTF social media to get these things out there starting right away, really right away. So people have access to information about the implementation plan projects. Barry?
Very good, Marty.
One,
Barry, go ahead.
yeah, thanks, Marty. I guess the question I have is, have you vetted this through Kayla?
We are gonna do a double check with Kayla, but she's been on some communication flows about this. And we'll
Okay.
do a double check with this particular report version after this meeting.
Okay, and Jill, does this fit in with the scope on their contract?
Yes, I believe it does.
Perfect, thank you.
And just again, I didn't say this specifically, but this is a way to try to get information flowing sooner than the data dashboards will be ready. But of course, the data dashboards are going to be a key part of communicating with the public about progress on the implementation plan. We just are feeling like we need to have some information going out sooner than that will be then those dashboards will be going posted.
Scott, go ahead.
I'm just wondering procedurally, Barry, you said because we made that announcement previously, we can't vote on this, but do we need a motion to do this, or can the chairs collectively just say do it?
I think whatever the co-chairs are comfortable with. I'll let Jill, though, give the final answer, because I think she's gonna have the right answer.
I always prefer the task force to vote, but the task force has voted to allow the steering committee to manage the Crossroads consultant contract. So I do think it's within the steering committee's purview to allow them to use their services this way.
Very good. And Bertie.
I was just gonna kind of echo what Scott was saying. I had the same thought. If this is within the scope of the contract that we already have with Crossroads Consulting, and we've already established that we want to communicate regularly with the public, does this really need a formal motion and vote by the task force when it's within our scope of work, it seems to me?
Well, speaking as a chair, I would like to see this happen sooner rather than later. So whatever the most expedient manner to move forward is, if we have to wait for the next steering committee meeting, so be it. But it seems to me that if this is already in your scope, and we have a discussion here and nobody has any objections, I would say we should just simply move forward.
The other thing I was going to offer, it's kind of a creative idea, is that we may have a quorum of the steering committee here that we could convene and pass a motion. That would be. At least
No, the
very-
steering committee would need to be noticed for 24 hours ahead.
Yeah, that takes the creative out of the creative part. Sorry.
Jill, when is our next steering committee meeting?
Next steering committee is February 12. But we do have planning team scheduled for this Wednesday as well.
Can we just move forward? Can we have them move forward since it's within their contract already? Is there any reason why we have to bring this to any other body?
I'm comfortable because the council has approved the contract. So from a council perspective, I'm fine with it.
I agree.
Okay. Holly and Marty, thank you so much for bringing this forward. I'm glad we had the discussion, and a lot of work has been done already to move this forward. So have at it.
Thanks, and we'll do a double check with Kayla before.
Yeah.
goes.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's great.
thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much. Okay, very good. All right, next item, just doing a time check here. Next item is, okay, I guess I'm up. Hold on one second while I find my notes. I think I'm gonna start at the very end. And the very end is the motion. So I'm gonna read this to you and then we'll go back from there. So I move to approve the creation of an IPRTF Behavioral Care Center work group to conduct detailed research, engage local stakeholders, and make recommendations aligning with best practices in mental health care and criminal justice reform. So that is the motion that I would like to make, but for some background, I think that, and Scott, I see you have a question. Go ahead.
Typically chairs can't make motions. Is that true in this group as well, or is that?
We actually covered this just before you guys got on the call. That is, and Jill, I want you to weigh in here, but I was under that impression too. That's Robert's Rules of Order. However, Jill, we use some modified version. Would you speak to that?
Yeah, Roberts has different rules depending on the size and purpose of the group. So, and forgive me, it's been a minute since I've read through Roberts, but I believe it's something called a small committee format is how the IPRTF operates, and that allows chairs to make motion.
So,
and the other thing that I want to go back and just address Mayor Cordice's comment about quorum is that both Whatcom County Code requires that, and the Open Public Meetings Act requires that there be a quorum to take action. So we do need a quorum of the members to take any kind of official action.
So Peter, to solve your issue for making a motion, when I'm leading, I just say I'd entertain a motion to, and then you state the whole thing, and then somebody says I move, then you're suggesting it, and somebody in the group makes the motion. It's a lot simpler, and we don't have to worry about parliamentary procedure then.
Very good.
I can weigh in on the actual parliamentary part, and that is we are not governed by Roberts. We are governed by a form of Sturgis, but it's whatever the American Society of Parliamentarians recommend is what the council takes on. And that is a slightly modified version of Sturgis. Does allow chairs to make motions. When I was chair, I made tons of motions on the council. So it is allowed technically.
Very good.
And then to add to the complication, we don't have a quorum anymore.
Yeah, that's fine. I wanted to just start with the motion that would be made had we a quorum. So just to give you a little idea of where I'm headed. So I believe everybody on this call well understands that that we have been talking about a behavioral care center based on what could be referred to as the Nashville model as part of our new jail that is being planned. We've had plenty of discussions around this model. In fact, when Scott and I and others on the Yes Committee were going around the county talking about a new jail and behavioral care center, this was something that we talked about. We showed pictures of, we explicated every which way to Sunday, but we have never gotten into the great details of what would it take to to implement the Nashville model from Tennessee to one that works for our community, meets our community goals, and also operates within the Washington state, the laws of Washington state. So I think it's about time that, and as Kayla said, I believe that work on the IPRTF, a work group, would dovetail well with the planning process. And so I'm proposing that we get a small group together. And I spent part of my last week talking with the following people: Erica Lautenbach, Maya Vanyo, Caleb Erickson, the Sheriff Tank, Eric Ritchie, Hannah Fisk, and Hannah's name came out from Erica, who would like Hannah to participate. And then I spoke to Judge Jones as well about the concept of having a work group within the IPRTF so that this discussion could move forward. We can get through many of the details, any concerns, and get this conversation going. So there's in the packet, there is information about this model. I also have a whole trove of documents. If anybody is interested, I'm about to send it to Eric Ritchie, who requested it, so that his civic or civil department can begin research to see what it is that what their opinion is on what can and can't be done here in Washington State with this model. So that is where we're headed with this. I don't know whether this work group should be within some other committee or if it's just a standalone work group. The work group, in my estimation, would include the people that I just listed and perhaps a few other people from the IPRTF who are particularly interested in this subject. And work group, one of the great advantages of it is that it is a small working group and can be disbanded easily once the work is complete. And they would be reporting to us here in the IPRTF main body meeting. Any thoughts, discussion around this? Obviously, we're not going to be voting on it today. We've still got a little bit more time. The house is not burning down. This does not have to be done immediately. But we do want to get this small group moving. Any thoughts or questions? Okay. All right. Well, I guess since we don't have a quorum, we can't really move forward. But we'll put it on the next agenda or next meeting's agenda, and we'll move it forward. So, Stephen, go ahead.
Yeah, just unofficial opinion here. Since the group you listed is not a quorum of the task force, and it's not any other formal group, I don't know why you couldn't just informally invite a group of friends and colleagues to have coffee together and begin a conversation around that topic before you form a work group.
Right. Well, that is true. There's no reason why not to do that. I do believe that kind of the timing of this, again, as I said, the house is not burning down. I think, this project, this work group, this, BCC model is very much under Prosecutor Ritchie's, leadership. There's, and I would like to get it sounds like he wants to get going with this and get his civil department to weigh in. So that will take a little bit of time. I think we'll be on track to do good work as a work group. There's no reason this cannot wait for another month, but I would encourage any conversation on this topic because I would love to get this our thoughts and opinions all together so that we're in really good shape to move this forward. So anything else from anyone else? Heather, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, sure. We sure
I had
can.
to go off screen to feed the baby. So I just want to add for the conversation, I support this work group. I think that this is a really critical and timely conversation that needs a variety of input, and there needs to be a designated space for people to go and have the conversations. So I very much support the proposal.
Well, thank you, Heather. That is one of our one of the things that IPRTF can do well is convene. So that's a great opportunity for us to do that. So, all right. Well, we'll move on to the next item, which would be committee updates. Who is doing a J-pop committee update? Is that Holly or Marty?
Yeah, that's me.
Holly, go ahead.
Yeah. Is my sound coming in okay, Peter?
Yes, we can hear you just fine.
Okay. Well, we have our minutes from our December and January meeting that are in your packet. And I would say the key highlights are just that we finally got our rules of procedure, all the really groundwork we had to set up keys of the IPRTF and index in particular. We've got our work plan or our action plan done, so that's really exciting. We've got our co-chairs in motion and our protege, so that's really fun. They are rocking it. And so we did a lot of just finishing up kind of our groundwork. And then in December, we had Caleb Erickson come and present the new facility, the Jail and Behavioral Care Center, the focus groups we want to do with the inmates. And then Hannah Sloan came and talked about a program they're doing now in the jail to improve outcomes. So it's been really rich. It's been just awesome. And the J-pop is so, yeah, there's just such commitment in the group, both from people who've been around for a while and then the newer folks. So yeah, the notes are there, just especially if you weren't able to attend that last session with Caleb and Hannah Sloan. It's online and you can watch it, and it's worth watching. So did people have any questions or comments?
I'll say that the notes were excellent, and I thought that even though I wouldn't discourage anybody from reviewing the meeting itself, you're going to get the high level info from the very well done notes. So just wanted to say that for everybody. Well worth reviewing. Some really good Hannah Sloan, her presentation on an experiment. I'm so proud of Whatcom County and the Sheriff's Department and Lifeline for putting that program together. It's something that we saw not that long ago in Ohio, and they ran this experiment in our jail, and with really good effect. So it was excellent. I'd like everybody to make sure that they know about. And what was it called again, Holly?
Marty, what was it?
It's the Making Changes pilot project.
Right. Yeah,
It's a
that's
very
great.
small sample to start with, but it is so promising, and they're planning to go forward with larger groups or more groups into the future to keep testing it, keep studying the impacts of having this peer support and therapeutic environment. And they're offering individual therapy and group therapy multiple times a week. So it's really great.
Yeah, very
Hannah-
powerful. Thank you.
Sorry, Hannah's PowerPoint where you can see their measures, how they evaluated the program for all of us here who like to see what the results say. That's online too. So every time we do these notes and everything, they're up on the website, so you can see them.
Very good. Anything else? Any questions about J-pop? All right, thank you very much for that. And steering committee, Barry?
Yeah, I don't have really anything to add that we haven't already covered, other than at the beginning of the meeting, steering committee meeting, Jill announced that we are now using Chat GPT for our meeting summaries. And I just want everybody to know that. And Jill, did you have anything you wanted anyone to know about that?
I don't have anything to add.
Were these minutes that I'm looking at from steering committee done by that?
No, that was me. Sorry.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say this is really good.
Sometimes it's easier to do it on the fly. Yeah.
It was good
There
because
will
it was
be,
you.
we will include a disclaimer at the beginning of the minutes indicating that all or a portion of the summaries were done by AI.
Yeah. Anyway, I just wanted everybody to know that. And other than that, Peter, we've pretty much gone over everything. A lot of our discussion at steering was around the bringing recommendations forward and so on. So
Very good.
that's all I have.
All right, thank you so much. On to other business. Anyone with other business they'd like to bring forward? All right, seeing none, we can go on to public comment. There is no one in the conference room with me, Jill. Is there anyone online who might like to make a public comment?
We do have a number of attendees. If any of you would like to speak to the task force members here, please virtually raise your hand now. And no hands are raised.
Okay, and with that, we will close out today's meeting of the Incarceration Prevention Reduction Task Force and Law and Justice Council.
Excuse me,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chair. Sorry.
Yes.
We do have one attendee with a hand raised.
Oh, I'm
now.
so sorry. Yes, go
Okay.
ahead.
Go ahead, Mr. Nguyen.
Hi there, my name's Long Wen. I'm just leaving the gym and I've been listening to this meeting. I was just curious, have you guys looked into how this would affect other rehabilitation centers relating to funding and also the partnership with other reentry services, particularly the Bellingham Reentry Center?
Jill, are we able to respond to a public comment? I know a lot of people don't do that, but he has a
You may
fairly
if you
direct
like.
question.
You may if you like.
Okay, I don't have a good response. Could Melora, are you online? Did you hear that question? Anyone?
Yeah, I am here. It would be helpful to hear the question again, though. I'm sorry. Apologies.
Oh, of course. So I was just curious, have you guys looked into how this would affect the funding for other reentry centers locally in Bellingham? And also the partnership with other reentry center programs within the state of Washington. And I'm also a private citizen, and I just have to share that I'm not representing the state in any capacity.
Yeah, thank you so much. I guess what funding are you asking about specifically?
I think in general, I'm not, so I don't know too much about this kind of stuff and this topic, but I do have a very big passion for rehabilitation and helping people in need, especially in our community. I have many years of lived experience. When I was just a little boy, I entered the diversion program, went through probation, things like that. So I've probably approximately, 20 years of reentry experience within the county. Just a concerned citizen, just curious what other what other things that you guys are looking at relating to other reentry services and how they can partner with this project.
Yeah, absolutely. This is probably a conversation we should take offline. Jill, is there any way for you to share my email address with this individual?
I'm happy to. If the two of you would like to stay after the meeting right quick, I can let you exchange information.
Perfect.
Or
That's
Mr.
perfect.
Nguyen, yeah.
And I'd just like to say thank you, Mr. Wen, for sitting through a long meeting and giving voice to your questions. So that's what this is all about. So thank you very much.
Absolutely.
And
You're
with
welcome.
that, I will close out the meeting and for January 27th, 2025 of the Incarceration Prevention Reduction Task Force and the Law and Justice Council, and leave Mr. Wen and Melora online. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate your work.